volunteers. None of us are paid to do this work. So we have people that do all sorts of jobs or, spend their time doing all sorts of things outside of this group. So I'm very happy to be joined by a lot of my colleagues on the panel, and I know some of the attendees as well are Persist Brooklyn members. So thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, Anya. So on to Mobilize. As I said, I think many of you have used our software before. We are a mission-driven organization that exists to empower other mission-driven organizations to grow their base of supporters and increase their supporter engagement. Our methodology here at Mobilize is that your supporters or your community members, your advocates, whatever it is you prefer to call them, they are your most important resource. So they are the muscle that's really empowering your organization to complete your bottom line goals. So whether you are a legislative advocacy organization, whether you are a candidate like Elizabeth Warren, or if you are a grassroots organization, it is all of the members that you are recruiting into your network that are going to get the bottom line done. That's why we at Mobilize exist. We want to help you grow your base of supporters, energize them, and engage with them. We are laser focused on helping you drive more action more easily to achieve your mission. The way we do this, three-pronged. I like to think of it as chronological. The first, and Persist is a great example because you started on ground zero. The first is to grow your base. So you're a small group, maybe there were 10 or 15 of you. Next month you have 50, next month you have 100. Things like our social recruitment tools, our integration with your CRM are going to help you grow that base and ensure that your data stays squeaky clean. The second piece is increasing your engagement with each and every one of your supporters. So I like to say that we make sure that none of your volunteers are one-time volunteers. So they're showing up to your happy hour, then they're doing a phone bank with y'all next week, then they're coming to your teach-in. We want to make sure that no one's saying, oh yeah, I attended one of their events once, they were nice. We want to make sure you're really building this deep group of supporters that are coming back again and again. The last piece of this is the network. If you are familiar with Mobilize, you've probably seen how certain Mobilize pages have different content from different organizations on your pages. Because we exclusively work with progressive organizations, we encourage each and every one of you to promote each other's work to increase the power of the network. So every time a new organization joins the Mobilize network, every single one of you is growing stronger because there are more eyes and more progressive volunteers, supporters, folks like you and me on the website seeing your content. With that, enough about Mobilize. Let's talk about Persist. The first big bucket that especially has resonated with me as I've been chatting with Persist over the last couple weeks is the way that y'all communicate with your volunteers. So the first thing is in the way that y'all support your volunteers. Milo, this is something that I remember you felt super passionately about when we chatted a couple of weeks ago. You were very clear to point out that every single member of Persist has their unique superpower, and something that made y'all very successful in the beginning was asking each and every volunteer to really harness that superpower, whatever it was, even if it wasn't traditionally connected with advocacy, to contribute to the group. So I want to pause right there. Exactly. So Milo, you can jump in.
Sure. Thank you. I think on this call, part of the Persist Brooklyn community is represented by, we all have different particular interests and skill sets besides the commonality of advancing the progressive agenda. And it was actually part baked in at the front end of actually getting people to reflect on what they thought their superpowers were and identifying those hidden talents that we as individuals are besides our phone banking, text banking, fundraising skill set, such as crafting and social media and actors and graphic design folks. And so that was part of our intake in the beginning, was to actually do that. And we seek that, and I think some of my colleagues on the call can speak to some of those different groups. We have a very strong crafting team, which has really given people an opportunity to be creative. And maybe I could potentially ask, I think, is Isaac on the call? Or Deborah? Both, but I think that maybe the two of them could speak to how they think that those two specific superpowers that are not thought of as classic electoral work superpowers have been absolutely instrumental, and have become, the crafting team has become part of the heart of the soul of the Persist Brooklyn community. Great. So maybe Deb and Isaac, do you guys want to speak to how you
Sure.
what you felt that space and what you created?
Sure, Deb, you want to go?
Sure. Am I on? I can't even tell. I see you, Isaac. Well, when we started Persist Brooklyn, we realized that we needed signage of some kind, and Isaac and I kind of had a little conversation, and we said, well, let's just print out some signs and glue them on cardboard, and then offer them to people to put up in their windows and on, wherever else they wanted. So we decided to have a crafts night, because when you say crafts, people show up. And one of the things that Persist Brooklyn has, it's kind of our ethos, is that we want to make an easy way in for people to start their activism. And when you say crafts, people show up because they want to cut and paste and they want to glue things. And so at that first event that we had in Isaac's backyard, outdoors, which was before we had to be outdoors, we had lots of cardboard that we scrounged from the street and printed signs, and we just glued them on. And then at our next tabling event, we sold them. So we made money to make buttons, to do printing. We made fans for Elizabeth Warren. We put, I'm a big fan of Elizabeth Warren, and we made fans. It was summertime. And at that event, we had maybe 3 people who became really just cemented themselves into our crafts team. So we grew exponentially just from that one event. And ever since then, we've gotten together to make holiday ornaments, New Year's Eve hats and glasses. And then that morphed because one of the people that joined us has been writing postcards for a really long time with Red to Blue. And so she inspired us to then become a postcarding team. And we started creating and we started doing that indoors. But then when the pandemic hit, we realized we could do these outdoors. So we had 2 months where every Saturday we had a postcarding event. We wrote postcards to voters all over the country. We wrote more than 10,000 postcards, and we're still at it. We just had another postcarding event last Saturday for writing to voters in Georgia. We handed them out this time instead of having people hang out because it was a little cold. But and we're not done yet. We made ornaments we made a beautiful Christmas tree with Stacey Abrams as the angel, as a way to get people to come over and see what we were up to. And the 2 senators were the ornaments, and we made some more ornaments. We sold a few of those, and again made a little money to buy more supplies for Persist Brooklyn. But we also got people to donate to the 2 Senate races. So that it's just been a lot of fun, and
Awesome.
and it brings a lot of people in. Isaac, you want to say anything?
I mean, just echo what you say. We try to make it a low bar to entry, I guess, just because texting and phone banking can freak some people out, but you never know what talent you're going to pull in. So we like to try to make things as fun, and then it turns into visibility, making things just being out there with our Stacey Abrams tree and our ornaments with like the peaches with Warnock's face and Ossoff's face. It also brings an energy to the community and brings more people into our fold. So we always make sure, like when we're visible, either doing our postcards or anything like that, that we're also promoting our other events. And then, you know, using Mobilize, we've been able to, you know, keep, you know, get return participants. But
Awesome. I love that. I mean, I think the takeaway is that, as you said, Milo, every single person has a superpower, and empowering your volunteers is going to make them come back. The other thing you mentioned, Isaac, is these low lift asks. It's something often when I observe one of our partners who perhaps only has text banks and phone banks on their Mobilize feed, I'll recommend that they do offer a more social event so folks feel like they're getting something from the organization rather than just giving 2 hours of phone banking, which we all know can sometimes be a little bit arduous. So moving on, something that Leah, I remember you spoke to a couple weeks ago was how easy it was to get folks to come back to happy hour again and again because of the routine and the dependability that y'all kind of built up. Would you mind speaking to that a bit?
Sure. I think we, as Anya mentioned at the start, we all volunteer and we all wear many hats and are working or raising children or doing many other things. And we can't necessarily always attend one event if there's infrequency or our schedules maybe shift or maybe we can't attend all. But if we know there are standing events that we can go to, we can show up sometimes and then not attend others. And the more variety of events and frequency there is, the easier it is to lean in when you can and kind of step back when you need to. And that's something, the diversity and optionality that's offered with Persist Brooklyn in terms of this just sheer scope of different events that are happening allow you to, especially I have to say, during this period where we're all pretty locked down. We're in Brooklyn. We live on top of one another. We don't have backyards so much. So, you know, I did a Georgia choir sing-along fundraiser this week with Persist in my apartment. And there's This Is Tonight, and then there's a text and sweet tea text bank another night. There's always something to do. And again, there's not the pressure that you have to show up all the time. There's a lot of understanding that we're all going through a lot, especially now. A lot of our members were furloughed at different points or lost their job or changed jobs. And there isn't this expectation that this is a commitment you've made and you can't move around.
Awesome. And that does speak to something we mentioned in the last slide, was that when you all notice that somebody who perhaps was a repeat goer at one of your events missed out on an event, rather than sending them an email a little bit less personal saying, we missed you, where were you? You all reached out to them basically to make sure everything was okay. Life is really unpredictable right now. Folks have really unique challenges. And that was just another way that you spoke to each unique member of your group and was really amenable to each of their needs.
Yeah, and I think it also goes to the fact that we really feel like we're not just working towards a common cause, but we're also building community, and there's trust in community, and there is like that whole concept of we're a village and it takes a village, and we speak to one another as friends and colleagues and partners, and that really lends itself to kind of being open and vulnerable as well, and also effective in what we do.
That's a perfect segue, Leah, to the point about being community partners. Anya, I remember hearing about essentially the way that y'all make decisions at Persist. You have a steering committee. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a steering committee. That's just the term that we use for sort of the centralized decision-making body. There's like we have an official internal process to get onto the steering committee, and we do our best to identify people who are eager to not just attend events, but maybe host their own or lead the events that we host. So we try and bring them into the steering committee as well. The steering committee meets, we used to meet more often, but we've kind of slowed down a little bit after the election, but we meet every few weeks just to have like all of our teams touch base. So like the crafts team, the text banking team, the phone banking team, it's a place to just sit and say, okay, what do we have on the calendar? Are we noticing any trends with attendance, anything like that? But one thing that I think is really important, and it's really great that Persist integrates into our decision making, is that we might come up with an idea, but we vote on it. So that vote is either through like a Google form that we send to our listserv via email, or if it's a more quick decision, maybe not as big of a decision, we put out the reasoning for making that decision on our Slack channel and we have people vote. So it's really important to all of us that when we make decisions that we're very apparent in how those decisions are made. And then we make sure there's an avenue in case one of our members has a question about it or is maybe not comfortable with the decision, that they're able to speak up and have their voice heard and potentially have the decision reassessed.
Awesome. Cole, did you have something to add?
One of the other things that I think is good about having a decentralized structure is that it prevents burnout and it keeps everyone really productive. So for example, I'm on the communications team. One day somebody gave me the reins to the Twitter, right? Because they were feeling burnt out on creating content for Twitter all the time. And that's really the only thing that I'm super capable of doing on the communications team. I don't know how to manage an Instagram account. I don't know how to make graphics. And so the fact that we are decentralized and we all kind of combine together what Mila called our superpowers helps keep any single one of us from feeling like it all hinges on us, right? And it has great results. I mean, our accounts compared to organizations of a similar size and scope, we have like 5 times the amount of followers as other local organizations in Brooklyn on Instagram. We have twice as many followers on Twitter. It's turned out really well for us, even though we haven't been around for very long.
I love those stats, Cole. That's also a plug to go follow Persist Brooklyn. Great. So this is a little bit similar to what we were just chatting about in terms of having a pretty flat structure and empowering everybody, but you all spoke specifically, this kind of ties to the superpowers too, about having, your teach-ins when folks are specific subject area experts and really just helping every member of the group speak to something that they know a lot about and having these special sessions. I know we had a couple specific examples. Can anybody speak to one of the things that y'all have done recently?
I hate to jump in, so if anybody else would like to, but I am sort of the team lead on the study groups, which I will talk about in more detail, but they're essentially political education groups that we put together where we read and investigate political theory and history. We, at the end of every session, tell everyone who's attended, like, if there's a subject that you know a lot about that you feel like we should all know about, that is an opportunity to set up a new study group. So we have one of our members who is like super smart, and she has a lot of lived experience as an activist and organizer, and she proposed doing a study group on Black Families Matter, which ties in the American education system, the policing system, and the carceral system, and how that actually leads to over-policing and family court of Black families. So she's helped put together a curriculum, and it's going to be, we're still in the works of finalizing it, but it'll be a part study group, but also a part teach-in, where some local advocates will actually come and speak to some of the material that we are studying. So this is like an idea that just one of our members came up with, and we help kind of guide the reins, but we don't like to overstep. We say we're here to help as much as possible, but you take on as much control as you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then if anybody at Persist, somebody asked a question about Amelia asked a question about how y'all would recommend getting materials, hard materials to folks for example, craft materials. So if anyone wouldn't mind answering how you all have done it in the chat, that would be wonderful. So the next piece of this, which we've touched on, is hosting creative events. Seems really simple, but part of the special sauce of Persist Brooklyn is that you host events that people actually want to go to. That is getting harder and harder to do in this virtual world, and you keep coming up with great ideas. So at Mobilize, just internally, we spotted this Persist prom and we went crazy over it on our internal Slack channel. We couldn't get over it. So if anyone just wants to speak for a little bit about how this went and kind of logistically how you executed, I would love to hear that.
I wasn't on the planning committee for Persist Prom, and someone else can speak to that. But I just want to say that I think one of the reasons that I personally feel like we've been so successful in coming up with these ideas and having them actualized is that we have that culture and community where we can throw out like, I think it would be fun to have a prom, you know, in my mid 30s, and people are like, yeah, let's do that. Or it just, you're not, people like, one event that I had organized, thought of recently was a 5K, to do a 5K right after the election when we weren't sure what the results would have been. I had been going for a run on my own, and I was like, oh, this is such a release. And I was listening to Barbara Streisand, and I was like, oh, we have no idea what's going to happen, but I know during all the chaos, like this group is going to want to be together through it. And what better way to show that we will move forward no matter what is going on than to physically move our bodies forward and be together. And it just so happened that Pennsylvania was declared while we were all together in the park, and it turned into a, you know, street party, and it was wonderful. So someone else can talk more specifically about the Persist Prom, which I did attend and was a wildly successful event. But just in general, there is this culture of, you know, no idea is kind of too far afield, and you can just present it, and most often people are on board, not only on board, but supportive and ready to jump on board and back you up and help you make it happen.
And then Laura, I know you were pretty deeply involved in the prom planning, if you'd want to.
Yeah, I think honestly, prom came from a meeting of the electoral strategy team, and kind of someone just said that they wanted to dance and they wanted to hang out, and somehow that turned into prom. So it really just kind of came from our desire to want to have fun together, and people wanted to do things that they haven't done in real life in a while. You can't go out dancing right now. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, and different people having different ideas, and it came together really organically, considering we hadn't really planned a whole bunch of big social dance events or entertainment events. But yeah, again, it was just sort of in Slack and on like weekly calls. People would just pick up tasks. People would say, hey, can you do this? And kind of thinking just about what was said about just kind of people's superpowers is that one thing we really are good at is we know who can do certain things. So if we need someone to make a graphic, there are different people who we know we can ask. If you need someone to do a social media push, we know who to ask. And so it wasn't like the prom committee suddenly needed to be able to do all of the things to get an event together. We could easily sort of pass off tasks. We could have the sort of big idea, and then some of our members would take on looking for entertainers or looking for auction items, but then we can pass off kind of some logistic steps to people who are really good at it. So people who aren't necessarily planning one big event are really crucial in making them happen, because they have the talents and the superpowers to do certain things that the person who had the original idea may not have, but it still all comes together because we're so good at working together, and everyone's so generous with their time and their talents, because a lot of these events wouldn't happen if other people didn't step up, I guess, with their skills when they're needed the most.
Thank you. I think the next couple slides are just the other really fun events that I pulled from your feed. So this is the virtual happy hour, and this speaks to what Leah was saying earlier about having the routine of the happy hour. So if for whatever reason I cannot attend this Tuesday, I know that all of my friends will be on the Zoom next Tuesday, and it's something to look forward to. So we'll coast along here. This is back to the study groups. Anya, if there's anything else, because I know this is something that has been kind of really stuck with y'all and something that's been really meaningful. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the study groups?
The only thing I'll add, and it's like a good best practice overall, is it takes like a couple of tries to find your groove in hosting events, especially when it's not just like, you know, phone banking or texting. And so when we started the study groups, which were in response to the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, we sort of found our groove on like how much material to assign. So everyone reads or watches the same materials, and we have questions to discuss. But we like directly reached out to people that had come back multiple times and just said like, what are you liking about this that's making you come back, but what would make you recommend this to 5 of your friends? And that sort of targeted requesting feedback was really helpful to, you know, finding the best way to set these up and have them run. So
Thank you. That's extremely helpful. It looks like folks in the chat are very excited about baking events. I myself am too. Okay, so we are at Mobilize. So something that has been really exciting for us and for Persist is watching how helpful Mobilize has been as you all build up your group. So we asked the folks at Persist to come up with a couple kind of best practices in Mobilize that has helped them be so successful. So I don't know if any of you want to take these. That I can talk about Mobilize all day, but I think it's more fun hearing from folks who are using it. Anyone want to take a stab at this one?
Sorry, we were all discussing our baking in the chat.
That is totally appropriate as well. I baked gingerbread last night. Okay, so I'll take this one. So the first thing is, folks, as I said, on the line probably are a little bit familiar with Mobilize, but something that is very unique to our software is the ladder of engagement, which is going to, again, help you recruit new supporters and make sure they come back again. Something that Persist has really relied on is our bring a friend ask. So if you have signed up for any event on Mobilize lately, you have probably been prompted with a pop-up that says, over 500,000 people have found Mobilize through social recruitment. Why don't you invite your friends too? This little pop-up, though innocuous, brings in about 20% of all signups across the entire Mobilize network. So we have about 5 million volunteers right now who use Mobilize to find volunteer opportunities. About 1 million of those folks are finding their events through that little bring a friend pop-up. This is something that has been uniquely helpful to Persist Brooklyn. Folks want to partake in an event with their friends. Oh wow, there's this virtual prom. This sounds like a blast. I would likely send that to my friends and hope that they would show up with me. And again, if any of you want to cut in, please stop me. Second piece of this is the network effect that I mentioned before, the cross promotion, which allowed Persist to join other folks on the Mobilize coalition. I think you, even during the Warren campaign, I think y'all were starting to hosting events. So I don't know if there was even any collaboration with the official campaign itself. That was probably a really easy way to start growing that fantastic network of folks in Brooklyn. And then the last piece of this speaks to the data, which I'm looking forward to chatting a little bit about more. Frank wrote in a really excellent question, centralizing volunteer information. Something that we hear from a lot of groups. I chat with a lot of grassroots groups who actually have college chapters, and the biggest obstacle they face to really formalizing their group is that data is everywhere. So this college chapter is using Facebook, this college chapter is using Eventbrite, maybe one college chapter has Mobilize. Having every single supporter engagement opportunity flow into Mobilize and having all of your data in one place is going to make just the maintenance of that data and then the outreach after the event really, really seamless and really easy. And you're going to watch your list grow a lot faster than if you were working off of a bunch of disparate systems. Yeah, Isaac.
I just wanted to say, you know, I'm also on the newsletter. We use MailChimp for our newsletter outreach. So it's real easy for us to upload new people to our newsletter. That it's hard to get people to, not hard, but not everyone who goes to one of our events is signed up for our newsletter. But because we have the CSV that we can export to, you know, import into MailChimp, I think that's been really helpful for us to continue, you know, the other way that we can outreach, not only with Mobilize, but through our newsletter.
Awesome, thank you. So you export, so what Isaac was saying for folks on the line, exporting the signups directly from Mobilize and importing them into MailChimp. Down the line, perhaps if Persist has a different customer relationship management tool, they might even have one that integrates with Mobilize. Those are a little bit more costly, not as friendly to grassroots groups, but something that someone on the line mentioned, Van. We do integrate with CRMs such as Van so that you can even skip the exporting process.
And Kit, I just wanted to add for when you like start to manage data, sometimes you'll put out an event and you'll get a lot of people who sign up, because it's a great thing with Mobilize that when you sign up, it's like, here are 5 other events that you might be interested. But sometimes you get people that are like, sure, I'll go to all of them, but then they don't show up.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually take attendance on Mobilize, and that's a good idea, because some people will like sign up for like 10 of your events and then not show up to any. And then, you know, like maybe I should target them and say, hey, we see you're signing up and not coming, you know, like, is there a scheduling issue? Or then you also know, you know, who is signing up and showing up all the time. So that's easy to take attendance in Mobilize. And it's a good way to keep track of not just signups, but participation.
Awesome. Anya, I'm happy that you unmuted, because I'm going to ask you to unmute again, because I remember specifically you mentioning how helpful it was to keep in Mobilize the event description simple, basically like a best practice in marketing. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, it is really, like, especially if you're doing a new event or like an event that's not as intuitive, to like try and put everything you can in the event, but people don't read it. And like, I found if I have an event where it's like, there are 3 important things you need to do before you show up, if those things aren't at the top, people won't do them. So it's better to keep the event description simple and then actually put more details in like the automated follow-up emails. So like, don't put your Zoom link in your event description, put it in the follow-up email that comes in. And then also, I am not very computer savvy, but there is a way to hyperlink like links in the Mobilize description. And that's a really good way to keep everything looking nice and clean. And it's an easy trick, but it makes it easier if you're linking to stuff, which helps keep the event description simple, that it's not like then a massive hyperlink with all these letters and symbols.
Agreed. As a consumer of Mobilize links myself. Milo, I remember you mentioning 2 things. A, having the specific email alias for all correspondence related to events, and then also taking advantage of private events for smaller gatherings. Would you mind speaking to that?
Sure. So one of the advantages is sometimes you want to collect a group of people's emails and contact info, but you don't want to blast it to your entire listserv in your community. So you may want to just deal with the regular members or a subgroup. And there is a button in making an event that is private versus public. And public is anyone on the Mobilize platform or searching the internet can potentially find your event. And if you have an event that you'd like to, whether it's maybe a fundraising or almost an internal working meeting, and you just want to know who's signing up, the public versus private function is actually very helpful. So for example, we were doing some phone banking with the Warnock campaign, and that was basically, it required special training, and we didn't want to just blast it to the universe. We wanted to do it with established phone bankers in our community. So I made a private phone banking mobilized link and shared that with our phone banking teams, allowing people to choose and cull who would be able to join that event. And then having to simplify amongst many users, we've simplified a contact point that we as an organization have a common email that can be staffed or read or responded to by several of us in this amorphous but effective fashion. So we have like persistbrooklyn@gmail, and we use that on multiple our events and some of our landing pages. So if somebody has a question, it's not on any individual person. We kind of have distributed support to Persist Brooklyn with regards to events and such. Also, when making events, I think this was maybe also part of that. When making a truly public event, if you're not comfortable using your personal email or phone number, the advantage of having our persistbrooklyn@gmail, knowing that someone's going to look at that, can be helpful in the outward-facing event if you're not comfortable having someone be designated to. Mobilize, fortunately, doesn't require a phone number as the contact, and we can use our group email for contact, so we don't ever feel if we're getting, obviously in the Trump era, people are somewhat concerned about forward-facing public email and phone number stuff. So a nice solution to that we've used is the specifics of the generic email for posting our public events.
Thank you, Milo. And just food for thought, I know a lot of groups have also started, it's not as impactful to the movement, but a lot of groups have even started using private Mobilize events just for their internal staff meetings, just because it's so easy to use. We do that at Mobilize, and I would encourage you all to do the same. So Cole, I think it's your time to shine. We have an entire page on social media. You shared that y'all are doing quite well in terms of the followers that you've gained in comparison to other peer groups. Would Cole and anyone else mind sharing some tricks and tips to help understand how well you've done on social media?
So the first thing I would say is just to keep the tap running. I think one of the most important things that we've done that similarly sized and scoped volunteer organizations don't always do is we post all the time. We have a story every day on Instagram. We have Twitter posts every single day. And part of the reason for that is just to make sure that we stay front of mind for people. So one of my favorite things is, seeing somebody have a conversation on Twitter, like happened this week, where somebody says, I'm moving to New York. I used to volunteer for the Warren campaign. Where can I find my Warren people? And we come to mind for people, which is really exciting. And so that thread that grew out of that, a lot of people were mentioning Persist Brooklyn, because when you go to our page, we have, just this week, we had 7 events this week, all hosted on Mobilize. So the big thing is to just always keep the tap running and always have content. And one of the ways that we can do that is, as we said previously, make sure that nobody's burning out. When you're a volunteer organization, it's very easy for that to happen. So making sure that there's lots of support, that somebody can step in when it's really necessary, is essential. Anybody else?
I was going to say, Cole, could you speak to, since you manage the Twitter page, how would somebody like me get something on our Twitter?
Sure. So something that we've done is we've used another digital tool, which is Airtable. It's kind of like a Google Sheet with more bells and whistles. You can add images, you can add other kinds of media, you can add files, and you can implement, things like checkboxes or attachments that make it a little bit fancier than a traditional spreadsheet. So we have one of those that's linked to a form, an Airtable form, very similar to a Google form, and people can submit through their social media request. So sometimes in an organization like ours that's so decentralized, it's hard to keep track of everything that's going on. So if there's a one-stop shop that all of our, 4 different social managers can go to find how they're supposed to post, or what the copy is going to be for their content, or what the images are going to be for their content, just having that one-stop shop makes it much easier for them to do their jobs.
And, oh yeah, Leah, go ahead.
I was just going to add another nod to the crafts team, because not only is it just a fun community activity, but it is really Instagrammable content that they're creating, and it helps with this social media. Not only does it help provide content for Instagram, Facebook, everywhere, but I think we've been picked up and in at the Women's March, when we were honoring Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the crafts team created 9 Ruth Bader Ginsburg robes with collars for people to wear, to symbolize like when there are 9 on the, which is a famous Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote about having 9 women on the Supreme Court. And also I think at the Protect the Results rally, their posters are so impactful and awesome that they were picked up by some other news outlets and in newspapers. So, and even the postcarding team was in a local newspaper as well, featured for the visibility that they were able, and the impact of the work that they had done. So another kudos to the crafts team.
I think I need some screenshots so I can include them in my follow-up email to all of the attendees. So please, someone send those.
Definitely.
While we're on this slide talking about other tools and knowing that a lot of groups on the line are grassroots volunteer-led groups and cost is of the essence, I want to run through, just be very literal about how much these items cost so folks know that they are accessible. So I'll start with Mobilize. Mobilize is free of charge to any volunteer-led grassroots group. That is why we love working with y'all. MailChimp, I think y'all mentioned, is something, it's quite small. It's like $50 per month, or yeah, Milo?
Yeah, 50, yeah, 50 and
Okay.
change.
And then Airtable is also free of charge, I believe.
Yep.
Great. And then Slack is also not. Okay, awesome. So I just want groups on the line to know that these are for you. These are tools for volunteer-led groups, and I don't want the slide to look daunting. Oh yeah, Mila, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just want to add one thing that we didn't talk about before, which we found using QR codes very helpful, for especially as we have multiple events and tabling, and that's turned into a boon in the era of COVID. So, a year ago when we started, we'd get people's emails at a farmer's market or on the streets of New York, and they'd sign a piece of paper, and one of us, often me, would have to transcribe it, and it was problematic. And we moved to QR codes. For those organizers who haven't embraced QR codes for any of your public events, strong recommend. It's free. They're QR code generators that can convert any link, especially your Mobilize links for your events. So it was really ideal when we were tabling, and even now in COVID, when we are doing some outdoor stuff, to either drive people to upcoming Mobilize events, drive people to sign up for our newsletter, to actually do it all virtually, not virtually, but do it digitally through their phones. So using QR to direct people to Mobilize on the streets or in out and about, especially in the era of pandemic, you're saving having people to pick up a pen, and they can sign up for events.
That is an awesome plug, Milo. Thank you. Are there any other pieces of software or tools that have proved helpful for you all? I think I got them all down, but I want to
say Zoom is the only other one, and I'm not sure, Milo, if you could speak to if we pay for premium Zoom.
We do. It's $15 a month, basically unlimited time, but only one stream, one event at a time, which we've found a few times is we've bumped up against that. But $15 a month for unlimited Zooming.
Great. And Zoom. Oh yeah, Isaac.
This is not to speak to Zoom, but if anybody wants a free option to basically all the graphics that I personally do, I utilize GIMP for, which is a free open source program that is not as powerful as Photoshop. But for what I do, the silly things that we do on crafts, it's perfectly powerful enough. So I just wanted to plug another like free option as opposed to having a creative suite.
Awesome, thank you. And just for everybody on the line, I am going to compile basically, I'm going to transcribe this webinar so that hopefully you have a step-by-step guide for how to build your own fantastic grassroots group. Okay, great. You posted to GIMP. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Perfect. We were at 5:21 Eastern time. We have a couple minutes for anybody who has any open-ended questions, or if anyone from Persist Brooklyn has any just last minute thoughts that they want to pipe in. I just want us to all have the opportunity for discussion. So I'll scroll through the chat and make sure we haven't missed any questions. Well, Milo.
I just had another one. Thinking of the events as this lattice in time and place, and thinking that there are always future events, and people are coming in for crafting, people are coming in for phone banking and postcarding and Persist Run, and having those next events, even if they're very vague, but having that next one. So if you have an idea that you're going to be doing an event in February, just putting an event in Mobilize and aiming for that. And if you have to move it, at least you can move it and the participants will be notified. So one of the mantras we've always had from the beginning is just get the link up and we can work the details. We don't have to have who's going to do what, but that way in the interval as subsequent events coming up, you can always be pushing people towards that event. So thinking of the time frame and the lattice of events, even if you're not certain of the date, have it up, and then that will help guide people and drive people to it. And then the second is using VIPs or special events to really bring people into the fold. We've started to, over time, now we've reached some visibility that we're having some VIP folks stuff. We've had some presidential, sorry, not presidential, we wished. We've been trying, as of today, I was trying to get Senator Warren to we have a fundraiser on Saturday, and just today it was firmed that she cannot make it on Saturday. But in any event, but we had to our happy hours, we had three U.S. House of Representative candidates come and speak to us at happy hour, and using the Mobilize is actually part of the hub for that. So we push the happy hour with the VIP, and it brings people, kind of collect people to star status. And so thinking of using some special events, we did a screening of a movie and used Mobilize for that. We did screening of The Brainwashing of My Dad. We're looking at propaganda and misinformation. But thinking of special events that are unrelated to electoral work to bring people in, and then we always at every event are sharing the lattice of upcoming events as well. So it's like come for the movie, stay for the postcarding kind of thing.
And to Milo's first point about just get the link out there, if you have a link on Mobilize and you change the date, the time, the title, and the Zoom link, all of your registrants will receive the updated information. So I could not agree with Milo anymore. Just get the link out there. We will adjust the calendar invites on all of your attendees' calendar. As I said, the Zoom link, I made a change to the Zoom link earlier today. So just get it out there so it's on folks' calendar and on their brain. We are all eager to have things to look forward to right now. I speak for myself that way. So I could not agree with you anymore, Milo. Mike, the features of, I'm reading Mike's question out loud. The features of Mobilize were hardly even mentioned. Any good sources of more information in the platform? Yes, I could talk about Mobilize for 24 hours in a row. So Mike, I will send you an email and we can set up a time to chat, and I can also just link to our home site so you can just poke around to learn more about what we do. So if we'll stay on for a couple more minutes if there are any other questions, but yes, of course, Mike. So, oh, Deb, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would just say, as far as Mobilize is concerned, that it's really just easy to get started. I started with a debate party. I had no idea what I was doing, and I ended up with like 20 people coming to my house. It was awesome. And that was just by putting it out where other people could see it. It's really easy to post an event. It's really easy to keep track of who's coming. It's really easy to use and to communicate with people.
Thank you, Deb, for that plug. I'm very appreciative. Perfect. Sandra, I see your note. I will reach out. Awesome. Oh, I love all these nice notes. So something I just wanted to get out is that, as I said, I will send a step-by-step, basically all the tools that everybody's been using, the best practices, and I will probably have our wonderful marketing team throw it in a blog. So it's prettier and nicer than I will do. And that'll probably be live next week. So you'll hear from me both tomorrow and next week to reiterate all of the items that we chatted about today. Yeah, Mila.
So I'm sorry. We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Mobilize to allow us to become what we are. Just curious though, if the changes this week, understanding that Mobilize and another organizing group have joined forces, if that will impact our access as grassroots, and if any changes are anticipated.
Great question. No changes are anticipated to our grassroots offering. We will always offer our services completely free of charge to volunteer-led groups. That's at the heart of our mission, so you don't have to worry about that. And then for anyone else on the line who might have seen that we merged with Every Action, which also is Van, there are not really any product changes coming from this merge. I think the only changes will be that our integration with them will be even cleaner and more spiffy. So if you currently use that integration, you will be happy with what you see. And aside from that, we're just hoping that each group will now have more resources so that progressive groups can just keep organizing with the best tools possible.
Thank you. That's great to hear. That was there was a little gulp moment, candidly, having seen that PR release and just wondering if that was the end of an era. But glad to hear that you understand the value of keeping the grassroots community supported.
I'm sorry that you even had a gulp in your throat. That makes me feel so sad. Nope.
I just wanted to add, so we talked about it briefly, Slack, which is where we do a lot of our communicating. And so anyone that's here watching that maybe wants to like start up a Slack, you guys are like welcome to join ours. We'd also welcome hearing what your groups do and what gets people to your events as well. So our Slack channel has people from all across the country as well who sometimes plug into like very specific events. So everyone is welcome to join the Slack channel. And if you do, just like announce yourself and we'll be sure if you wanted to like set up another time to discuss, we'd be glad to do that. So, and hopefully that link works.
Thank you, Anya. For everyone who, make sure you look at the chat because, oh great, you already, Carolyn would love to join. There are a couple really helpful links here to all of these resources. Wonderful. Oh, Isaac.
I meant to, when you're talking about Mobilize specifically, twice we've had, I just wanted to speak on it again, but twice we've had to move a couple of our postcarding events, one because of weather and one because of we didn't get our postcards in time. And just to plug Mobilize, I wasn't worried about, it's like, I was not worried about the fact that I knew that Mobilize would get the information out to people and that it wouldn't be a huge problem. And I just think that is really a really great feature, knowing that you can change it and that they're going to send that info out. And then you can also customize your own message to people so they know why things are changing, but that it's just automatically going to happen. I love, like, that's been super helpful.
Thank you. I feel like you all could have hosted this webinar instead of me next time. Okay, that sounds like a perfect way to end. I want to thank everybody who attended and was very active in the chat. This has been a lot of fun. And of course, thank you so much to Persist Brooklyn. I am blushing, but you can't see because there's this bright blue screen on my face. So as I said, you will hear from me tomorrow via email, and then I'll follow up next week with a spiffy blog post that my marketing team creates. In the meantime, please reach out to me. You'll receive my email. It's just kit@mobilize. I am always thrilled to talk about any questions, whether it's about Mobilize or just about building your grassroots group. So with that, I'm going to take this blue light off of me and wish everybody a happy and safe evening. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.